guys, welcome back to Advanced Bass Fishing, and appreciate you guys coming by the channel today for the episode. And we're going to be talking about one of the mysteries of the bass fishing universe today, and that's why wiggle warts don't work very good in the summertime of the year, except for one situation. There's one situation they do work good in, but I sort of want to discuss in the bigger, broader picture why certain lure categories are productive at certain times of the year and not at others, and a wiggle wart's a prime example of that, so we're going to dig into that in today's episode here. Also, guys, a couple quick things before we get started. Anybody interested in booking a private one-on-one on the water lesson with me, just go to my Facebook page, Intuitive Angling with Randy Blaukat. You can shoot me a private message for details there. I do most of my lessons here in Missouri on Stockton and Table Rock Lake. And guys, one quick reminder, we have about 4 or 5 days left in the big 250th anniversary sale the Solar Bat has on my Signature Series glasses, my RB2s and 3s. You can get them at half price right now through the end of July. 50% off. You're not going to have a better sale the rest of the year. 3 different frame colors, a bunch of different lens colors and options. I'll have my Solar Bat link in the description of this video, and if you use the promo code RandyB, you get free shipping and handling. So thanks for putting up with those plugs there. Really appreciate that. Okay, guys, this right here, the dang wiggle wart, is like anybody that fishes knows this is a great. It's a great lure anytime that water temperature is over about 50 degrees, up until it reaches about 70 degrees. Once it gets above 70 degrees, you just don't catch much on wiggle wart for some reason. This bait, if you're not familiar with it, it's got a very wide wobble for the most part. It's a bite-sized bait. It's very similar to profiles that work throughout the summer. For example, I catch a ton of fish in the summertime on that Megabass Super Z2. Let me show you the comparison here, and we'll sort of talk about here what I'm talking about. This is what I really don't understand about this, guys. Now take a look at this here. And maybe you can explain, because I'm just theorizing here when I get ready to this. This is one of my favorite summertime crankbaits. This is the Megabass Super Z2. And here is the wiggle wart held right up next to it. Now, aside from the fact it's a different color, I've got shad patterns, but you can see there's not a lot of difference in it. I mean, it's a small crankbait, very similar profiles. Yet you can't hardly get a bite on a wiggle wart in the summertime, and I rip them on the Super Z2. So let's discuss a little bit about why that is, and we'll talk about the one situation where wiggle wart will hammer them in the summertime. Let me talk about that real quick, then I'll talk a little bit about why I think the wiggle wart doesn't work very good most of the time in the summer. If you guys ever smallmouth fish up north, like if you ever go up to the Great Lakes like Lake Ontario, St. Clair, Lake Erie, even places like Lake Champlain, those big famous northern clear water smallmouth fisheries, I have waxed them, guys, on that wiggle wart for smallmouth. Just basically fan casting them over those flats out there, catch a bunch of fish on them. But that's smallmouth. That's a different animal all the way together in a clear water situation. But I have ripped them doing that. I have tried fishing that wiggle wart in the summertime, and I just can't get a bite on it. Now, it starts working usually like in the fall time of the year when that water temperature starts falling down into the 50s, it starts working again. But why does the wiggle wart not work in the summertime, and why do certain lures not work in the summertime that work at different times of year? Now, ultimately, this is speculation and this is theory, but it's backed up by some pretty reproducible results after doing it decade after decade after decade. There are several triggers that bass key in on, especially with a moving bait like a crankbait or a jerkbait. Now, those triggers are the lure profile, the lure size, if the lure is rattling or quiet, the vibration the lure puts out, and most importantly, in correlation with the wiggle, because the wiggle has a lot to do with this, is how much water that bait pushes and displaces. So when you're talking about different lip designs, certain lips create a different frequency. They push a different amount of water. They move different in the water, and the variations in the wobble can be very subtle and very slight. But to a bass, at different times of the year, with their mood and their personality and their level of activeness or inactiveness, certain lure profiles and vibrations and colors and profiles, everything like that, determine if the bass want them. There is something about a wiggle wart, the way that bill is designed, in my opinion. It doesn't have anything to do with the bait profile, because the bait profile is perfect, but it's a combination of the design of the bait, how it's structured, how wide and how high it is in relationship with the lip and the lip angle, that pushes water differently, that the summer bass just don't like it for some reason. They don't respond to it. So if you put a wiggle wart side by side, like next to that Super Z2 crankbait, you're going to notice a little bit of a difference, but you're not going to notice like a massive difference. They both wobble through the water. There's going to be a little slight variation in how wide they swing side to side and how they feel on your rod tip. You know, they're going to pulse different on your rod tip, but that's all it takes. I mean, literally, that is all it takes. There are other baits like that fall into the same category. You know, Alabama rigs traditionally don't work very good in the summertime of the year. Jigging spoons usually don't work very good in the summertime of the year. Spy baits don't work that great. Jerk baits, they're very situational in the summertime. You can catch them on the summertime, but not as good as cold water. So there's a lot of different lures out there that the bass, you know, really prefer or don't prefer at different times of the year. I personally think it's three factors that determine this. Number one is the daylight hours. I think the daylight hours, the amount of them are changing all the time. They're either getting shorter or longer depending upon the time of the year. That's one factor that changes a bass's mood and personality. The second is your water clarity and your water temperature, and sort of like the proximity to the spawn. I think everything is sort of centered around the spawn for a bass. They live in lakes basically to eat and breed. So they're much of their year centered around that spawn. Whatever it is, that is just a reality of the situation. You'll learn more as you get bass fishing that there are just certain baits that work better at certain times of the year. Now this, you'll notice a lot more of a difference on this, the more pressure that your lake receives. If you have a lake that doesn't get much fishing pressure, you can catch them on about anything. I mean, bass get conditioned very quickly to size and profile and wobble of a lure. But if you're on a public body of water that most of us have to fish, you're going to notice these subtle changes and these subtle differences a lot more than somebody that fishes a private body of water. You know, those bass that are highly educated and pressured and smart, you know, they pick up on little stuff like that. And for whatever reason, it is what it is. I mean, that's sort of my theory on it. You know, whether that's right or not, I'm not know for sure. But I do know for one thing, if you and I went out tomorrow and one of us was throwing that Super Z2 and the other was throwing the wiggle wart on the same type of areas, you're going to get waxed on that Super Z2 over the wiggle wart. Even if we had the exact same color, you'd still get waxed. That's just the reality of the situation. Another one of those things that makes bass fishing one of the toughest sports on earth. So, you know, guys, let me know what you think about it. We'll talk later.